Welcome back, everybody. You got Will and I-Man here from the Block Runner, and today we're going to be talking about a couple of projects called ECOMI and Terra Virtua. So
Yeah.
these projects got us got in our radar with a bunch of like comments in the YouTube section, right? And so we started looking at them. I think we saw Terra Virtua a little while back, and we're starting to see a pattern here that a lot of these like newcomers into the space, like the newly introduced Tom Brady into the NFT space, getting
Mm.
into digital collectibles. So we're looking at ECOMI here. It's worth $1.5 billion now. And if you look at the chart, it's seemingly out of thin air.
Well, I don't know about thin air, dude. I think this project's been around for a couple of years, so it definitely took a lot of execution to get to this point.
Yeah.
So there's some unique features about all these things, right, that make them so valuable today.
Yeah. So let's check
I
out
think,
their site.
yeah.
Okay, so here's the website for ECOMI, and it's pretty short. They have a mobile app, and then they have a secure wallet, which is pretty cool, a card. If you jump into the site, view website, and it takes you here. And the only place that you can see these 3D models are by downloading the Google Play app or the App Store app. And what's notable about Vivi is they have a ton of IP, Ghostbusters, Star Trek, DC content, all kinds of stuff.
Cartoon Network,
Superman.
Jurassic Park. I mean, a lot of notable IPs, right? So that's a big deal. I mean, a year ago, if you guys happen to be in the NFT space, we these type of brands were unheard of. You
Yeah.
know, there definitely wasn't as much commercial interest in NFT as a marketable product. But I think we're starting to enter into this whole new phase. Like obviously we've penetrated the mainstream zeitgeist at this point, right? Like the consumer is interested and they're ready and willing to buy. I think it took like certain critical moments, like the whole Top Shot event and whatnot, to kind of break through that barrier, right? To get people to understand there's actual serious value in these digital collectibles. So now we're in this sort of like market wide discovery mode, right? Like how do you channel all these different IPs? Like where do you find value for them?
Yeah. So this IP and like the actual NFT, it's like it's hard to describe. It's like the lowest hanging fruit. So if you're like a brand, you're like DC, and you have like this huge roster of IP, and the lowest hanging fruit in terms of NFTs is just creating collectibles out of these NFTs. And so that's what they've done. This is a collectible project. They have, like I said, an app, and you find a bunch of 3D objects, like this Batman figurine here, and you can purchase it for 250 of their tokens. And so the latest drop was this Delorean machine, right? This vehicle. And
Very popular in the 80s, I think.
yeah.
I'm not too sure how this.
Yeah, here we go. Look at this.
Yeah.
That's what they purchased, right? And you can open the doors, and you can kind of walk inside and everything inside the car and kind of check it out.
So how are you looking at this, right? You're literally looking at your phone and recording it at the same time?
Yeah, so what happens is you launch their app, and it's a augmented reality app, and then you can just walk around. You place it into your landscape, your scene, if you will, and then you can just walk around, and then you can scale it one for one, the size of the actual DeLorean.
Interesting.
So this doesn't look properly scaled, but there's some other videos here. Yeah, this looks.
So this is it then. This is like the main. See, that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
so
then you tap the screen, and then you open the car door, and then you can kind of look at all the details.
Yeah, so there's some interactivity to these assets, which is pretty cool. This is definitely a whole new layer as far as like, it's engaging with your digital asset, right? The whole AR aspect.
Yeah.
I think it's definitely like early days for that. Clearly people are interested in this whole AR. I think mostly there's a lot of like virality for it, right? Like I could totally already see like the social media influencers like all over shit like this,
Right.
Like in their TikToks, just wait until they have, dancing freaking Alvin and Chipmunks or something like that. And feel like, these freaking TikTok talkers with millions of, followers is watching them dance with their AR assets, I think that's where they're headed,
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, they have that AR app. So like I said, if you download, you can buy a bunch of the assets, the IP assets that they're making, and they're worth $1.5 billion. Like I think this is going to be like the next phase of NFTs where we started out with art NFTs that went crazy. It went beyond bonkers. Like somebody bought Beeple art for $69 million, right? And so we're going to transition from art into the 3D space. It's going to be 3D collectibles now. And we're going to see a bunch of 3D collectibles applications out there, from web-based to phone apps, including ECOMI. And then Terra Virtua has their own kind of showroom for these 3D models as well.
Mm.
And so, yeah, you want to talk about Terra Virtua, like what their offering is, like in terms of the marketplace and the app itself?
I think it's very similar, is in the sense like both these projects focuses like onboarding, mainstream IP. You would think, just popular brands and products that people would be interested in buying. So, but the big showcase event, just like ECOMI had the nice little AR app to showcase your assets. These guys are building kind of like virtual reality rooms, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
If you're familiar with the metaverse, it's kind of like the metaverse is like a much more extrapolated concept of this, in the sense like everybody who owns a piece of land in the metaverse, think of that as like your room, right? You could showcase your assets any way you want within your own space within the metaverse. Now, these guys have kind of like isolated that experience by eliminating all that outside stuff and just giving you your own personal space. So that way you have like less limitations, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to worry about the burden of the load of like everyone else's experience around you. It's just like a much more concentrated effort, right? So that's why they have a marketplace with like high fidelity goods, right?
Yeah.
Very ultra realistic, smooth surfacing, not low poly.
Yeah.
Like this is kind of like their niche. Some people might want their collectibles to be as close as possible to like the actual thing, right? Not necessarily a lower poly version of it,
Yeah, so this is
it's like the 2D art market has like multiple different niches. The 3D collector market's going to have the same thing, right? So there's plenty of space for all different types of interpretations, pretty much.
Yeah, and these are straight 3D models. Like I'm not sure if you get to download the GLB file, so you can put it in your game or whatever it is. But it's the 3D model, and that's it. You see what you see is what you get. Then let's go into so why we have Flow up here. The reason why we have Flow is because Flow did what we think ECOMI is doing. And what Flow did was provide a seamless experience for people who don't understand blockchain to get into blockchain NFT assets.
Mm.
And so with Top Shots did like $300 million in like a week in volume. And so there's nothing in the NFT space that's ever done that before until Top Shots came in. And so now I think people are starting to get the idea that you could potentially replicate this on ECOMI, right? And so with ECOMI's, like they have a ton of IP, and they could potentially start competing with like the volume of Top Shots. So, and if you compare the two, ECOMI's at $1.5 billion, and Flow is, well, it's a blockchain, but it's worth 1.2 billion. But the idea that ECOMI is kind of seamlessly providing blockchain assets to people on their own, I think it's like Ghost Chain, or what's it called?
I don't know. I don't think it's their own chain, but yeah, it's Go Chain. So this
GoChain.
is not Ethereum native, right? And just like Top Shots weren't.
Yeah.
So you're right in the sense like there's a kind of like a coexistence trend happening where like some NFT projects like to remain within the Ethereum ecosystem, whether that's, and usually that means layer 2 integration, especially nowadays, because obviously main chain is not like a friendly user experience environment. So the next best thing you can do is layer 2 and still maintain like that decentralization aspect of your ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
But then you have the other side who are less interested in being about that life. You know what I mean? They're much more interested in onboarding these big IPs who also really don't have much of an interest to really decentralize anything, right? Like if you're these IPs, would you want to distribute the rights to these things? Like you have complete control, right? You want to maintain complete control and complete revenue streams of these things, because that's the world you're used to. That's how you profit. That's your business model, right? So that's why these guys, they're kind of going after them directly by saying, okay, yeah, we're not on the new Ethereum network. We're on our own, much more centralized network, much more scalable environment, much more user friendly, right? Therefore, you're going to have a much easier time onboarding these big brands, successfully selling products to their customer base, yada, yada, yada. So, I mean, there's a conflicting, I guess, ideology here. I don't know. To
Yeah.
me, that's the big takeaway, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, they're finding huge success in doing it like this, you know?
Yeah, and so this particular Medium article, which is extremely long, just talks about how you can take your the underlying asset OMI on from the existing chain and make it available on the Ethereum chain, right? A wrapped OMI.
Uh-huh.
And it's funny, like you read the comment, I was like, man, I'm not gonna go through all this just to put it on Ethereum. But the
Mm-hmm.
idea here is that if you wanted OMI, you can get wrapped OMI on Ethereum, and then do whatever you want with it, speculate on OMI in that case.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, man, it's definitely much more cumbersome to like interact in the Ethereum ecosystem, right? If you're just like a normal everyday end user,
Yeah.
like so. I mean, these are the decisions you've got to make as like a platform developer, right? You're building out a platform. How do you want your like who's your target demographic? Is it like mainstream culture, like pop culture people, not necessarily like crypto enthusiasts? Well, you kind of got to cater to them. That kind of means making the user onboarding experience like as familiar as they're used to. As like say this is like a marketplace on Facebook or something, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it should feel exactly the same way.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. So
So.
this, like I said, Delorean, it dropped yesterday, April 8th.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think they had three different NFTs. One that's interactable where you can open the door. And so they had 12,500 of these editions at $100 a piece.
Mm-hmm.
And then they had a non-interactable one, so just a static DeLorean. And so they had 25,000 of these at $69. And then a 1/6 scale version of the same thing, so at $29. So this seemed to be pretty successful according to their Twitter account.
Did it sell out or what?
They didn't say, but a lot of people were showing off their cars though, so a lot of happy people.
Yeah. So yeah, man, this is the beginning of like a whole new like market, I guess is what you'd call it. Yeah, like Tom Brady, he's obviously entering the space. So we'll see what he does next. I mean, I'm assuming it's going to be very similar, but like much more sports, right?
Yeah,
Like, who wouldn't want to lease their IP? Like, if you're an athlete or like a sports entity, who wouldn't want to lease your IP to Tom Brady's NFT platform, right? Literally the greatest athlete of all time.
yeah.
He's going to leverage that in every way possible, right? To kind of like secure himself as like the go-to sports branding, memorabilia platform, whatever you want to call it, dude.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, he has the clout to do that. So
Yeah,
I
so
think,
this one's called Autograph. So as you can imagine, what sort of NFTs you're going to be able to get on their marketplace is a bunch of autographs, right? Which
oh,
is a great idea. I mean, if you're Tom Brady or Michael Jordan, you're at the top of your class in terms of like athletes in the space. This is a great idea, and you get your peers to use the platform to generate these NFTs, and then you just sell it to people.
mm,
So this makes a lot of sense. I mean, there's not a whole lot you can do with like interactable autographs, but this is something that only Tom Brady could do. You know?
yeah, it's interesting, man. Like, we're obviously in like some weird phase of the market where like NFTs they're blowing up, right? But it's still super early. Like, it could be pretty easy to get like I don't know, like sucked into the mania so heavily and like thinking like this is just going to be like a forever uprun, right? I think we're going to experience similar
Just
like
5 minutes ago, somebody put a $50,000 bid on.
wow, way
Jesus.
to go, dude.
Yeah, my bad, dude.
Way to ruin my flow. Where was I going with that? Oh,
Oh, that
it's
people that this is a new craze and that people get carried away with like a lot of these
yeah.
NFTs.
Like the NFT industry is going to progress in phases, right? Just like cryptocurrencies did. Right now things are very primitive, very early, very static, right? That's what I'm going to call this part of the NFT like history chain, like the static phase, right? Things that
Yeah,
don't really do much, they just kind of like appear on your screen. Cool,
and that's
right?
it. Yeah,
Yeah, but at some point, this whole NFT industry is gonna, cool down
mature.
and mature and shift and find new use cases, new utility, whatever you want to call it. And so yeah, be cognizant of that, especially if you're speculating in the NFT market, right? But it
Mhm.
doesn't hurt, like if you are speculating, to kind of like pick and choose these platforms, right? The platforms usually is the safest bet if you're trying to like allocate some kind of resource,
Yeah.
expose yourself to this.
Yeah, I think the space will mature to the point where these NFTs will have to be available in an open platform. Like, I want to be able to see my 3D Batman not only on this app, but I want to be able to see it on OpenSea and be able to plug it into Rarible if I want to sell it on there. And because otherwise, I mean, if it's just in an app and it's an NFT, but you can't really move it, then like, what's the point of the NFT? Like, it has to be an asset it has to be movable. I mean, otherwise it defeats the purpose of it being an actual asset.
No, I don't think so. I mean, art, you don't do anything with art. And they're, some of them are hundreds of millions of dollars, There's more to the value of an asset than its utility, right? It's all about perception. That's
but can you move it? Can you move it from like one wallet to another? Like outside, let's say on the Ethereum network, like can you actually, or is it stuck in an application that you can't move out of?
Yeah, I think it's a huge mistake if you're trying to like build a platform and silo yourself away from Ethereum. It's the same mistake being like a DeFi ecosystem and not having some kind of like connection to Ethereum, right? Like that is a losing formula. At the end of the day, everything has to have some kind of value attachment to ETH. I feel like in order for it to claim to be, a true,
like an asset.
I don't know if true is the word, but in my mind, at least like a verified blockchain asset, right? Like if you're not associating your asset with the Ethereum chain, what are you even doing?
Yeah.
Like that's kind of like the value of crypto, right? Like Ethereum has been around for multiple years, has a pretty proven track record, a huge network effect. Therefore, like the asset perception is very strong, foundational.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't know if that exists on other chains yet, but I don't know, to be determined.
So yeah, you're right. So this is like a space that's clearly growing. I mean, if Tom Brady's in, that the top is near. But because we're in 2021 and not 2017, obviously we still got a long way to go. Bitcoin has a long way to go. This is what you would expect people learning about NFTs. Like, this is. I remember I made the comment like a few months back when we first started to see the entry of like these mainstream personas. Yeah.
Especially through the NFT space, like, like, did we just hit the top? But it's been nothing but nonstop this for like the last 3 months. So I think this is just normal crypto now. Yeah. This is what adoption looks like, I think.
Yeah, agreed.
I think it's safe to say that by now.
Agreed. All right, so that's the video for today. Let us know what you think about ECOMI, Terra Virtua, and your thoughts about Flow. Follow us on Twitter at The Block Runner and also at MetaZone.io. We appreciate all the comments. And we will catch you in the next video.
Later.